Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. The treble is still on. Can we do it? Will we do it? Two very different questions. Can we? Absolutely. Of course we can. We're Manchester City. We've done it before. Why not do it again? Will we? I have my doubts, to be honest, because it's an astronomical task that we're asking of this Manchester City squad. It's an incredible achievement just to do it once, and to do it again the following season would be ridiculous. But it is the six-time FA Cup winners going up against Newcastle, who haven't won a trophy in 69 years. An absolutely ridiculous trophy drought. From this season, though, Newcastle by far and away the most unluckiest side ever. The number of injuries that they've had is ridiculous. Constantly having to rotate players and switch players in and out. They've got players missing for this game. The draws that they've been getting in the cups have been ridiculous. They were in the group of death in the Champions League where they got knocked out they knocked us out in the League Cup, and you're thinking, well done to them. They must have been rubbing their hands together. They followed that with United, and then they got knocked out by Chelsea. And now they've got Manchester City away in the FA Cup. And could they knock us out again? Knocking us out of two domestic cups in one season, which hasn't been done since 1992 when Tottenham Hotspur did that to Manchester City, which would be very, very disappointing. Eddie Howe himself has come out and said that he was driving at the time when he received the news that Manchester City are the next opponents for them in the FA Cup, and he nearly swerved and crashed and killed himself. It was that dramatic news. That was his outburst, considering the news that he just received, which was understandable to be honest. But Newcastle not in great form. They've lost 12 Premier League games this season already, which is 7 more than the entirety of last season. Their European hopes are hanging by an absolute thread, currently sitting 10th in the Premier League. Whereas City, they're very confident right now. We're on an unbeaten run of 21 games. I know it all felt doom and gloom following that Liverpool loss, that's what I mean. It felt like a loss, didn't it? It felt like a loss. We drew the game away at Anfield. It felt like the end of the world. Some City fans were, I don't know how they were feeling, so doom and gloom. Frustrating that we weren't able to win the game against a Liverpool side that wasn't at its best in that first half. After that, you've got to take your hats off and tip your hat to Liverpool and say, well done in the second half. And well done for City for not caving. You know, we conceded a goal and we didn't collapse. It would have been nice to score a goal at the other end, but we fended them off to a reasonable degree and come away with a point. A point that we could be looking at the end of the season as a very good point. Hypothetical situations again, but with regards to the FA Cup, Manchester City are in great form in the FA Cup, to be honest. And since the start of last season, we've won all of our FA Cup games with an aggregate score since the start of last season, 31-3. So we've conceded 3 goals in a season and a half of FA Cup campaigns, and scoring 31 goals in the process isn't bad going, and beating Manchester United in the FA Cup final in the process. Wow. So the holders, can they do it again? I believe this FA Cup's up for grabs for City. I believe this is the one trophy that I think we can go and win this, you know. This is a real banana skin, though. Even though Newcastle are out of form, they've never been easy games. They've never been clear-cut. We only need to look to the fact that we played them in the League Cup this season, got knocked out. We fielded a very weakened side early doors. We almost gave up that game early on in the season because of our involvement in the FIFA Club World Cup, and knowing full well that the next round of the Carabao Cup, it was just almost impossible with the 2 games being back-to-back, day after the next, where we go to the Club World Cup. We'd have to leave a squad back home to play in the Carabao Cup and send the other half of the squad to the FIFA Club World Cup. It just wasn't doable. So we almost sacrificed the League Cup, and we still nearly got through. You know, they scraped by us, but we scraped by them at their place with Oscar Bob with that last minute winner. What a moment that was in our season, and a real moment, a high point for Oscar Bob. And we've not seen him go on to those next levels that we saw from Oscar Bob. And it's been, even Pep Guardiola himself has stated that he's been so disappointed that he's not been able to give Oscar Bob those minutes that he's craving, that he deserves, following that impact performance, as well as the little cameos we've seen of Oscar Bob here and there. I mean, I'm craving more. I'm sure most City fans will agree that I'm craving to see more from Oscar Bob, and I have a good feeling. I'm hoping that he starts in this game. What we're going to see from a Pep Guardiola side, I think it needs to be a mix. It always is a fair mix of players that haven't really had the minutes over the course of the Premier League season, but in the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup tends to be the two competitions where Pep goes three-quarter strengths, if that makes sense, rather than just completely out-and-out full strength. I think we'll be very nearly there to full strength Manchester City, but the odd player here and there will be rotated, some by force. Ederson, for example, and I'll get onto the team news, in fact, because Kevin De Bruyne right now, that's a huge blow. He's currently been left out of the Belgian squad, so he's missing for the international break. I therefore imagine he's missing for this Manchester City game with a groin injury. How long that's going to be, hopefully it's precautionary, and the international break has been a blessing in disguise for Manchester City, and he can go away and rest while the international games are taking place and can come back fit, ready to carry on in the Premier League. How long it's going to be, though, but this is the problem with Kevin De Bruyne right now. And as much as we love the guy, we love what he's capable of, we can't rely on him. He's not dependable fitness-wise. We've gone through this in our history as Manchester City players that we love and adore. Your Vincent Kompany's, your Sergio Aguero's, those two players in particular would always spend months out of every season. We never got a full season of Vincent Kompany. We never, very rarely got a full season of Sergio Aguero. He was always out for big portions of the season. We've now got that same problem with Kevin De Bruyne, and we have to factor that in long term. Elsewhere, Grealish, another groin injury. Bloody groin FC, Manchester City. Need to sort out our groins. Sick of it. Ederson out as well. Another massive blow. 4 weeks as well. I was really shocked to see that. It seemed like a dead leg. The impact that he got when he smashed Darwin Núñez. He didn't deserve the injury, but it was a very minor mistake from Ederson that was really more than 99% Nathan Ake's fault, to be honest. But Ederson had a little role to play in that penalty that we gave away, and he comes away with an injury, which is really sour taste from that situation. Unfortunate. But another potential silver lining, possibly a blessing in disguise, that Ederson's now out of the picture. Ortega's coming in, and it's not. He would have played this game anyway against Newcastle. He would have very likely played in this game, regardless of whether Ederson was injured or not. But this could be a little moment. We could see more of Ortega now, and Ederson could find it hard if Ortega goes away now and starts the next 4 or 5 games for Manchester City. Obviously, depending on how long the injury actually is. If Ortega can prove a point, Ederson might find it hard to get back into this team. Because Ortega's shot-stopping ability, for me, is better than Ederson. His general goalkeeping attributes, he's a better goalkeeper when you talk about your traditional goalkeeping terminologies, your shot-stopping, your commanding of that penalty area, your punching, your catching, things like that. Distribution, a level, maybe 2 or 3. I mean, who is at Ederson's level for distribution? The best goalkeeper in the world when it comes to distribution, and why he's so vital to Manchester City's style of play. So much of our success has come down from our ability to play out from the back, and the best in the world at doing that is Ederson. Ortega isn't bad at it, but the numbers are nothing like Ederson. Nothing. Always the distribution's much, much lower, and he will be asked to do the same jobs as Ederson. So we might have to expect a few balls going out for throw-ins and things like that from Ortega, but maybe, just maybe, we could see one-on-one scenarios or shot-stopping ability that saves games from a goalkeeping point of view, with Ortega now being in that starting 11 for the, let's say, 3 or 4 games ahead. We'll have to wait and see, because it's going to be really interesting. Newcastle. Anthony Gordon was a massive, massive blow and a huge plus for Manchester City, considering that he limped off in the previous game. Eddie Howe has said that he's fit. Now, Eddie Howe numerous times this season has lied in his press conferences, just out and out lied. Said players are fit, they weren't playing the next game. Said players were injured, and then they were playing the next game. He said Anthony Gordon is fit for this game, which I don't know whether to take that as gospel or not. I don't know whether to believe that or not. I have a bad feeling that he is going to be fit, and he is far and away Newcastle's best player of the season so far, the most effective. Goals and assists in abundance. He's the main threat this season, outside of Isak and Callum Wilson over the course of the season, who've shared the goals amongst them, whether they started or not. But Anthony Gordon's been a constant presence in that Newcastle side, and he's a major thorn in the side for players like Kyle Walker, who at St James's Park, he rinsed him on occasions, to be honest. He rinsed him. So Whether Kyle Walker's going to be starting in this game, I feel like he needs to. If Anthony Gordon's playing, then I feel like Kyle Walker needs to play to manage the speed that Gordon offers, which will be interesting. Outside of Anthony Gordon, they've got long-term absentees like Sandro Tonali, who's suspended from that betting shenanigans. Callum Wilson, Joel Linton, that's a massive one. I think that's killed their season. Joel Linton's such a figurehead. You know, the nucleus of their midfield, the dominance that they can enforce within their midfield, more often than not came from Joel Linton. What a player he is. I'm a massive fan of Joel Linton. He's out. And that was great news from a City perspective, because I feel like he was out for he was injured just before the Etihad game as well, of which we went on and won that game as well and quite comfortably dominated the midfield. Nick Pope is another one. Kieran Trippier, set pieces. I mean, he's out as well. Harvey Barnes, another Anthony Gordon type player, speed, agility, dexterity. That's gone, you know. So, I mean, this side should be beatable. At the Etihad in particular, we should be beating this Newcastle side. But I'm going to give my predicted starting 11s between Newcastle and Manchester City, and I'm going to start with Manchester City. So, of course, Stefan Ortega goes in the bags, between the sticks, the big man. And I'm confident, you know. I don't have any problems with Ortega being there, you know. There's not many clubs out there. I mean, Newcastle, to be fair, without Nick Pope, Dubravka's stepped up. He's done really well for them. But I think as second-choice goalkeepers, I can't think of a better second-choice goalkeeper in the Premier League. You know, out of the first choice and second choice, between the two, if you combine the two goalkeepers of all the Premier League squads, I think we've got the top two. Really do. It's amazing. Kelleher's doing really well at Liverpool, but Ortega, you know, he came on at Anfield. He kept the game clean. You know, not a clean sheet because of that stupid penalty that we gave away, but he deserved a lot of the accolades after that game. Considering we come away with a point, Stefan Ortega was a massive factor in that. I'm going to go with Kyle Walker at right back. I'm going to go with Ruben Diaz in the middle and Manuel Akanji, who's been solid as a rock for us this season. So a rest for John Stones. I'm going to go with Gvardiol, who's back as well. Another rest for Nathan Ake. These are the sorts of players that haven't really been getting the minutes, but Josko Gvardiol, I feel like this is a good game to get him back into the swing of things. In front of them, I think we have to play Rodri, as much as people might think maybe rest him. It's Premier League opposition, it's the FA Cup, we want to win it. We've had a week's rest, there's the international break to follow. Rodri has to start. He has to start. So I'm going to go with Rodri in the middle. And next to him, and where he plays, whether he's alongside Rodri or he pushes up a little bit further higher up the pitch, I'm going to go with Kovacic. He has to also play. I feel like he's done enough to warrant starting positions now, starting in the Manchester City starting 11 for the foreseeable future. Big games, I would like to see Kovacic, and with the absence of Kevin De Bruyne, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer, to be honest. In front of them, someone who's come under fire from me, as well as a lot of other City fans, combined with Pep Guardiola coming under fire a little bit with the use of Julian Alvarez and the fact that he played left wing against Liverpool was mind-boggling to me. It didn't work. I'm sure Pep Guardiola has established that it didn't work. It worked against Copenhagen, but we're talking about Liverpool. And now we're talking about Newcastle. All due respect to Copenhagen, we're in a different league. Literally, quite literally in a different league. Alvarez, I'm going to put him in the middle in front of Rodri and Kovacic, with Haaland in front of him. On the right, I'm going to go Oscar Bob, and on the left, I am going to go with Jeremy Doku. Now, how we play is what I'll get onto shortly, but before I do that, I'm going to pick the starting 11 for Newcastle. So, Dubravka in goal, Livramento, who's a quality player, by the way, he's just come out of nowhere, really, and he looks an absolute top player. Really, really good player playing at right back. Very big, physical, and speed as well. Technical. He seems like the full package. Livramento, a really good player. In the middle, the familiar partnership of Botman and Shah, which is pretty solid. Aerial duels. Haaland will have his work cut out for him in this game. Big physical guys. Shah and Botman, they enjoy the challenge. Haaland equally enjoying the challenge. That battle's going to be a really interesting aspect to this game. Left back, Dan Burn, who was possibly injured for this game, but rumours are that he's also fit. I consider him a weak spot in Newcastle's side. I feel like he's one of those players that is really capable. If he gets you in his web, in his spider's web, you're stuck. He'll win the battle. He's big, he's physical. And you lose your physical battles against Dan Burn. But it's the Oscar Bobbs of this world, the Alvarez, the Dokus, those type of players that Dan Burn struggles with because of his sheer physical size, the agility of players that he comes up against. He struggles against speed. He struggles against skill. But against physicality and his positional awareness, that's top tier. That's where his defensive attributes are so good, Dan Burn. But it's the rest of his game that I think you can expose him for speed and a little bit of skill here and there. So it'll be interesting to see if Oscar Bobb does play on that right-hand side and what he can do against Dan Burn, if that's the... Dan Burn, if that's the case. In front of them, I think we'll see Willock. If I can find him, where are you, little man? There you are, Joe Willock in the middle with Bruno Guimaraes, who we've been linked with midweek. I'm not convinced by that. I'm not too happy. He's a quality player, but I think he's Champions League quality. Absolutely, Bruno Guimaraes is a really, really good player. But why would we sign him when we've got Rodri? I don't really get that. To play alongside Rodri, potentially. Yes, that would be quite a formidable double pivot, to be honest. But I feel like there's better players out there. I feel like there's better players out there that's more suited to City as well. Because as good as Bruno Guimaraes, I'm not convinced, put it that way, that we should be targeting him. But be interesting to see whether Newcastle would be even willing to part ways with Bruno Guimaraes, in particular going to a Middle Eastern ownership model like Manchester City, and whether they're willing to exchange and do business with one another. That'll be really interesting to see. Now, elsewhere is Longstaff in the middle, which is a midfield three. You look at Willett, you look at Longstaff, good quality, but I feel like our midfield can do some serious damage to that midfield that we're going up against. Now, it's the front three that scare the life out of me. The speed, the ability. We saw it at St James's Park when we go 1-0 up with that unbelievable Bernardo Silva back flick, incredible, and then we go suddenly 2-1 down. 2-1 down out of nothing, with Anthony Gordon and Isak coming out of nowhere with just sucker punch, just long ball over the top, and the speed. Ruben Diaz, Kyle Walker, whoever you want to blame for those scenarios. It was Ruben Diaz giving it away on the halfway line that presented their first opportunity. Kyle Walker struggled in the second opportunity going one-on-one with Anthony Gordon. These three players scare the life out of me. So, first player, Anthony Gordon on the left. Up top, Isak. Dangerous, the finishing ability. We saw his finish midweek against Chelsea, by the way. What a finish that was. What a finish at Stamford Bridge. They didn't win the game, unfortunately, for Newcastle, but what a goal that was. Dangerous player. And Jack Grealish's best mate, Almiron, on the right. A box of tricks. Not the quickest, to be honest, but he carries the ball well. If he's got a player to beat, he's often got the advantage, to be honest. And he'll be going up against Josko Gvardiol, who's got a point to prove. You know, there are still question marks over Josko Gvardiol. And this season, next season, I think we'll see the best of Josko. Now, how the game's going to play is going to be really interesting as well, because I feel like, let me sort these players out. Now, what we do at the back is where it gets interesting. So I imagine Alvarez is going to hear. So I'm going to guess that Akanji is going to push into midfield. So, therefore, Kovacic can therefore push forward. So if Kovacic is sitting alongside Rodri, there's no need for Akanji to push forward. But I think Akanji can push forward into this midfield alongside Rodri, and therefore give Kovacic the freedom to sort of drift a little bit in that midfield and find break the midfield lines of Newcastle and pick pockets, as well as find pockets in that midfield. And his passing range is fantastic. And these cute little passes are delightful from Kovacic. I absolutely love this guy. I'm really, really pleased with the signing. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. So I imagine it's going to look something along these lines, with Alvarez sort of drifting in here. I want to see Kovacic sort of drifting in here, with Rodri and Akanji propping up the midfield, Ruben Diaz and Kyle Walker and Josko Gvardiol. Something along those lines. Now, whether Anthony Gordon pins himself to that wing and Almiron pins himself to that wing, and the counter-attack suddenly becomes really, really dangerous, because that's going to stretch Josko Gvardiol, that's going to stretch Kyle Walker, and then you're going to see that huge space in between, the expansive setup of the back three of Manchester City, just huge gaps to expose. Now, alternatively, you could ask Kovacic to sit, you could ask Akanji to stay, and equally, you've got a problem. You could ask Oscar Bob to come inside, invert like we've seen Foden do this season, and Kovacic sits a little bit, and Kyle Walker pushes forward. We've seen it already. This is not me coming up with some crazy tactics. This is Pep Guardiola. We've seen him do this season numerous times. A lot less recently. Kyle Walker in the last 5-10 games has not really been given the license to roam forward and get crosses in and involve himself in that attacking sense of our play. We've not seen that from Kyle Walker, and I hope we don't see it again, to be honest, because it's not his strong point, and he's also got Anthony Gordon to worry about. But you could see something like this. It is a possibility where Josko Gvardiol and Ruben Diaz and Akanji at the back three, with Kyle Walker pushing forward and Oscar Bob tucking inside. But then you've got this problem of Kyle Walker, does he stick or twist? Because he's going to rinse Dan Burn for speed. He's going to rinse him, and he's a big physical guy, Kyle Walker. So I feel like he could pose a threat going forward. And these long balls that we see from Rodri, where we drift over, Kyle Walker drifting in late into those back post runs like that we've seen Rodri just ping one over the back line of Newcastle. It's worked, and Kyle Walker's been a threat in that regard. But the problem is, if we lose the ball, Anthony Gordon versus Manuel Akanji in a foot race is not a foot race that I'm quite happy with, to be honest. I would rather Kyle Walker be the man for that job. What we do is up to Pep Guardiola, obviously, but I do want to hear your thoughts. Get your predictions in the comment sections below. Get your predicted starting 11. Who do you want to see start? Do you want to see the likes of Oscar Bob, potentially Rico Lewis? Could these guys be playing and getting some minutes? Do you want to see Kyle Walker sitting? Do you want to see Kyle Walker pushing forward? I'm sure some of you don't want to see Kyle Walker at all in that starting 11. I want to hear your thoughts, and I will be doing a watch along. Come and join me for that one tomorrow night, 5:30 kickoff. FA Cup action is back, and the treble is still on. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.
This is Typical City now, holding up silver.